I don't know how you did it, but you really have found a way to trap darkness inside your heart. And a boy who's immune to darkness is of no use to us.
Well, there's some good news.
Your abyss awaits.
Funny, you're pretty weak, aren't you? The way you fight, do you have any balls at all?
What? What was that?
In due time, Naruto. In due time.
Some kids say Number Zero's victory that day was the dawn of the 7th age of the kids next door. Others say this story is only make-believe. There never was a Number Zero, and there is no book of K&D. But I believe the book exists, and I know what I will write in those pages if I ever find it. 5 words only. I am Kids Next Door.
Hello everyone, I'm here today with Ben Diskin.
Hey.
Voice actor extraordinaire. He's been in pretty much everything you've ever seen. He was #1 in Kids Next Door, Sai in Naruto Shippuden, Venom in Spectacular Spider-Man, and a ton of other characters and a ton of other stuff. You've been acting for so many years across video games, anime, and Western shows. How did you get started in voice acting?
I got started in voice acting when I was 10 years old. Technically, I've been doing it since I was 6, but it was like auditioning for radio commercials, little things like that. 10, though, was my first animated series. It was this show called Problem Child, based on the movies with John Ritter, and it was like my first time going like, wow, this isn't just this weird thing where like, you know, you go into a room and you perform and nobody cares. People actually watch this stuff, but nobody recognizes me from it. When I was younger, I'd done a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger called Kindergarten Cop. And everybody on the playground found out about it and tormented me mercilessly for it. And I went, I hate this. I like acting, but I hate this. So I went, whoa, I can do animation. I can be an actor, and I don't have to deal with any of the negative consequences of fame. And so that was really my first intro into voice acting, and it stuck with me.
So you've voiced a lot of characters from for shows from many of our childhoods. How often do you get people who are kind of freaking out over you voicing a big character from their childhood, and what is it like to get that reaction? I
almost never get that reaction because the life of a voice actor is an anonymous one. So, like, unless it's here at a convention, Anime Con, Arkansas. I probably shouldn't do devil horns, I meant this. Anyway, but here's really the only place where anybody actually recognizes me. Normally, I walk down the street, take my dog to a park, nobody stops me and goes, it's you from, like, because it's just your voice, and nobody recognizes people's voices. But here, when that does happen, it's kind of surreal. It's as a result of being anonymous. You get people going, I know what you've done, and it's like, oh, cool, did you like it? Oh, okay, cool, awesome. So it takes a while to get used to be honest, but I still like it.
As I said before, you've voiced a lot of characters from our childhoods. The two that I commonly think of when I hear about you are #1 and #2 from Codename Kids Next Door. How did you go about getting those roles, and what was it like to voice those characters?
So I got into Kids Next Door because, and it just goes to show you how much luck is involved in this, the original voice they wanted for #1 was Tom Kenny. Tom had done a show called Kenny and the Chimp. It was a little short that Tom Warburton made, and he loved Tom Kenny. Tom Kenny's a great guy, great talented actor. He wants him in this. He heard him and he was like, you know what, it just isn't right for this character. So he said, okay, let me try a real child. So he got a real 12-year-old boy to come in and be #1. Meanwhile, for #2, what he really wanted was, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, it kills me every time, she played Angela Anaconda. Do you remember that show?
Yes, I do.
Okay, she was the voice of Angela Anaconda and a friend of his. And he was like, this is who I want to play #2. Okay, so Colette Sunderman, the casting director for this project, said to Tom, why don't you, like, let's hear some people. Let's hear some other people just in case. So he said, okay, fine. So he'd already cast number 1. I came in to audition for number 2 and number 4. Number 4 went to D. Baker, and I did my audition for him for number 2, and he went, wow, I'm going to have to tell my friend that she's out of a job. I like that guy more. So I was like, cool. So, okay, I wound up getting number 2. We did the whole pilot together. Unfortunately, by the time the show started to get ready, they were finishing up the animation of the pilot, the kid's voice had changed. So this young child actor now sounds like a man. And they went, we can't use this guy. He sounds totally wrong. So Tom said, like, okay, we got to recast. What do we do? So he had a bunch of people come in and audition. Didn't like any of them. Then he said, like, okay, why don't we have D. Baker and Ben Diskin just audition for this character? They're already on it. So I said, okay. I auditioned for number 1, and he went, that's the one. We'll go with that. So that's how I wound up getting number 1 and number 2. But that's the ironic thing is, if Colette had not simply said, why don't you give number 2 a shot, I would have auditioned for number 4, lost to D, and wouldn't have gotten either one of those roles.
Dang.
Yeah, so there you go. So
It's really awesome, though, that you got both of them like that.
yeah, I like it. I ain't complaining.
You've also voiced many characters from Marvel superhero shows like Venom, Spider-Man, and Scar. What's it like voicing iconic superheroes and villains?
It's really awesome. Voicing all kinds of different characters is a blast. My favorite is the villains. Villains, in my opinion, are always the most emotionally complicated, the most mentally complicated, and just the most fun to play. You really get to ham it up. Spider-Ham. Spider-Ham's not a villain, but you know, he's fun. He's like the cartoon character on that show. Like there's Spider-Man, he's Spider-Man. And then you got like the wacky animal guy. And so like that's a blast. And Scar is fun because he's like everything I'm not. He's really big and muscular, no. And he's also like just dumb as a rock. And thankfully I'm not a genius, but at least I'm not that bad. And so it's great to just be able to just push away like any intellect that I have and just go, oh, pretty shiny rock, yeah. So like, you know, the hero is always fun because it's like, you know, yeah, we can go get him, team, but the villains are the most interesting characters, the most complex and the most weird vocally to play. Venom was one of these things where it's a combination of 2 different voices. So they had me do this just sort of like dead, regular version of my Eddie Brock voice. Followed by this it's always fun. Any characters that are varied is great.
Now, of course, while you're known for voicing some iconic Western characters, you've also done a lot of voice work for anime. Are there any differences in voicing anime as opposed to voicing characters for Western animated shows?
There are differences, specifically because with anime, it's pre-existing animation. So you're always acting with that constraint on you of, okay, this has to match those mouth flaps that already exist. They're not going to go back and reanimate any of that stuff. So it's got to be as good as you can possibly get it, but it creates this sort of almost slightly off-kilter way of talking where everything is very deliberate because you are trying to make sure that it fills the exact word space. So it's a little bit unusual, but the way you approach the characters is largely the same. You know, a character is a character. So, you know, what's this character's motivation? Like, what have they done so far? What's their past? You know, what are they doing right now? What matters to them? It's all the same kind of emotional and mental preparation to play those characters, but the process itself is just different.
When it comes to anime, what kind of characters do you like to play as the most?
Well, again, I still like to play as villains the most, but for me, because I guess I'm a glutton for punishment, I really like the ones that scream at the top of their lungs. To be fair, I was very highly influenced by Dragon Ball Z as a kid, and I was like, I didn't get that it was done in like Canada and that it was already recorded because I was a little kid, I didn't understand that, but I was like, oh my god, I want to be on that show. I want to scream at the top of my lungs at the whole Kamehameha thing. So like yelling stuff, it's terrible for the throat, but I love doing it too much to stop.
So you've played a lot of iconic characters from shows like Bleach and Naruto Shippuden. What character have you played that you like the most?
It changes. My favorite character is usually like, it depends. Like if it means something special to me, like right now I'm a huge Digimon fan, so I'm playing Shoutmon. That means the world to me. That's like, it doesn't like pay that well, but I don't care because it's so awesome to get to do something that I grew up watching. But like, of course, I love number 1 and number 2 from Codename Kids Next Door. That was the first really big show that I got to do that was a big hit, and I played 2 of the main characters, so that's awesome. Venom is my favorite Marvel villain, so getting to play him, a role that I loved Hank Azaria in when I was a kid doing the 90s version, so to step into that role and play that's awesome too. So I can't pick one. Don't ask me, that's not fair, man.
So you also voice characters in video games. How is that process different from voice acting in shows?
The main difference between voice acting in video games and voice acting in shows is the fact that with video games there's several branching paths. You know, they have to take into consideration what's the player character going to do. It's not linear. So you have to be able to kind of keep in mind, and the director has to be there to help, of course, what scenario you're doing. Like, is my character your friend now, or is he your enemy now? You know, so like how do you go about keeping everything straight? And also there's just so much more content. There's thousands and thousands of lines of dialogue. There's all of the death groans and like impact and attack noises that you have to start doing. And it's just sort of, it tends to be a lot bigger because there's just so much action in a video game naturally. So everything is usually very loud and very intense, unless it's a very realistic setting like The Last of Us or something like that. But yeah, it's basically just bigger and louder and more.
Now, one of my favorite characters that you voiced is young Xehanort from Kingdom Hearts.
Oh.
What is it like to play that character?
Playing young Xehanort is one of these things where I go, okay, if you like it, thank you so much, don't thank me. Because it is 100% thanks to the direction of like the Japanese producer who's like in Japan, directing it remotely through a translator. They tell me nothing. So like I'm sitting there going, I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know the meaning of any of this stuff. And so they're like, okay, emphasize this word, emphasize that word, go down on this one, go up on that one. So that entire performance is super controlled because I would screw it up. I'd go, I guess this is important. They're like, no, that's not what that means. And they don't have time to go into like the massive explanation of what the plot of Kingdom Hearts is, because that would take hours out of the time. And they'd be like, okay, now we have 5 minutes to record all your lines, go. So it's one of those things where if it weren't for a director who really knows what they're doing, I would be lost on that one. But it's fun to be the guy. I like it.
And finally, my friends will kill me if I don't ask this.
Okay.
Have you been contacted to be in Kingdom Hearts 3 yet?
Well, the thing is, even if I have or haven't, I'm not allowed to say. It's non-disclosure stuff. That's the trouble. It's one of those things where, like, I hope that they would call me in, or will have already called me in, as the case may be, because I don't know. I'm not sure. Who knows? Maybe my character won't be in the game. You know, it's technically that was a portable game, so it might not be. It's not that it's not canon. But they might not necessarily need me in that, so who knows? Or they'll stuntcast me. They'll hire a celebrity to come in and play my character. I don't know. So I can't really answer that question. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Cool.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It was a pleasure interviewing you.
You too.
Pleasure to do this.
Thanks a lot.